Welcome, everyone. You've joined us for a deep dive into some, well, pretty fascinating material you sent over.
Yes, excerpts from Dion Fortune's The Mystical Qabalah. It's definitely rich stuff.
It really is. And sometimes, a bit dense, maybe? Like navigating a maze?
Yes, it can feel that way.
So our mission today is basically to act as your guides. We want to pull out the core ideas Fortune presents about the Kabbalah.
Make them accessible, yeah.
Yeah.
Not just understandable, but hopefully bring some real insights.
Exactly. Think of this as, a shortcut to getting the gist of her perspective.
We'll be looking at her idea of Kabbalah as a kind of Western spiritual path. Its history, according to her.
And the big one, the Tree of Life.
Right, diving into that central symbol. The goal is to give you those aha moments, hopefully, without you having to wade through everything yourself.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with that first big idea then. Kabbalah as the yoga of the West. What's she really saying there?
Well, Fortune's core argument is that it's not just some import, but a system genuinely suited to the Western way of thinking and being.
Suited how? What makes it a good fit, according to her?
She lays out a few criteria. First, she says the basic technique needs to be easy to grasp, initially. You shouldn't need to be some kind of natural mystic from the get-go.
Okay, makes sense. Approachable.
Second, and this is interesting, she talks about needing powerful, concentrated forces. Energy strong enough to penetrate what she calls the relatively dense vehicles of Western people.
Dense vehicles, meaning like we're less naturally sensitive or something?
Sort of, yeah. Maybe more focused on the material, less attuned energetically compared to some other cultures in her view.
Yeah.
So the methods need a bit more oomph, you could say.
Right, needing a stronger signal to cut through the noise of, well, modern Western life.
Exactly, and that ties into her third point. She talks about the racial dharma of the West, our kind of cultural focus on mastering the material world. And because of that, plus our busy lives, she argues the spiritual forces need to be manageable. Like you can invoke them intensely, but then release them.
Not like a monk who's meditating constantly.
No, precisely. She actually warns that trying to maintain constant psychic tension like a recluse could be, well, psychologically damaging for someone living a busy modern life. Neurotic conditions, she mentions.
So it needs to be practical for people with jobs and families.
Yeah, that's a key insight, the practicality she saw in Kabbalah for the West.
Which means, thankfully, no need to run off to a mountain cave.
Hey, right. And she also emphasizes that real spirituality isn't about outward shows.
Yes. She wasn't keen on pious displays.
Not at all. It's an internal thing, a transformation within, not something you wear on your sleeve. It connects back to that idea of working within the material world, which she felt was inherent to the West.
So Kabbalah provides a spiritual framework that actually works with that tendency, not against it.
That's her perspective, yes. A system that complements our nature rather than demanding we completely deny it.
Okay, that's a really interesting way to frame Western spirituality. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about the origins and influences Fortune sees behind the Kabbalah. Where does she start?
Well, she traces the mystical roots back quite far, back to the nomad star worshippers of Chaldea, she says. Even mentions Abraham hearing God's voice in his tent.
Standard stuff there, maybe.
But then she brings up something more mysterious, this figure of Melchizedek.
Ah, yes. The priest king. Always enigmatic.
Very. She points out the description. Without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. Very unusual.
Definitely not your average historical figure. What's his importance for Fortune?
She connects him to the first Eucharistic feast, given to Abraham after a battle against what she calls the sinister kings of Edom.
Representing unbalanced forces, she says.
Right. So this links Kabbalah's roots to a very ancient, maybe pre-Hebraic lineage, and to this idea of sacred ritual and balancing forces. It adds a whole other layer.
It certainly does. What about closer to, say, the time of Jesus? Does she see connections there?
Yes, and this is quite thought-provoking. She mentions the three main groups in Palestine then: Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes.
And the Essenes are notably absent from the Gospels, aren't they?
Exactly. Fortune brings up the esoteric tradition that suggests Jesus was actually trained by the Essenes.
Wow. Okay, so immersed in Israel's mystical traditions from the inside, essentially.
That's the idea. It offers a completely different lens on his teachings, suggesting a Kabbalistic or Essenic influence.
Does she give any concrete examples?
She points directly to the ending of the Lord's Prayer. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory.
She says that's Kabbalistic.
Pure Kabbalism, she calls it. She links kingdom to Malkuth, power and glory, potentially to Geburah and Hesed, or perhaps Hod and Netzach, and maybe the Amen relating to Kether or the totality, although the connections she explicitly names are Malkuth, Hod, Netzach, and Yesod as the foundation. Her point is, whoever wrote that prayer knew the tree of life.
Implying a hidden esoteric layer even in very common prayers.
Right. And this leads to her point that the Qabalah she's teaching isn't necessarily what you'd find from mainstream rabbinic sources.
Not the rabbis of the outer Israel, as she puts it.
Correct. She says her interpretation comes from initiates, the chosen people after the Spirit. She stresses that her version has evolved, incorporating things like alchemy and tarot symbolism over time.
So it's a living, evolving tradition in her view, drawing from multiple esoteric streams.
Precisely. It's a syncretic approach, definitely.
Okay, that sets the stage nicely. Let's get to the absolute core of it all. The tree of life. She calls it a glyph. What does that mean practically?
Calling it a glyph is key. It means it's a symbolic diagram like a blueprint or a map. And critically, it maps both the human soul, the microcosm,
Ourselves.
and the entire universe, the macrocosm.
Ah, the old as above, so below idea.
Exactly. She references that Hermetic principle. Understanding the tree gives you a key to understanding both yourself and the cosmos.
Yeah.
Because they mirror each other. That's a crucial insight right there.
So studying the tree is simultaneously inner work and cosmic exploration.
You got it. And the legends around the tree, she says, aren't just stories. They represent the history of how souls evolve, the stages of initiation.
So the tree itself tells a story of spiritual growth.
Yes, it's not static. She's clear that how we understand the tree evolve. It changes with personal practice, with new knowledge. It's meant to be a living system, not a fixed dogma.
That makes it feel much more dynamic and relevant, doesn't it? Okay, now she gets into some really abstract territory, negative existence and how things begin to manifest. How does she tackle that?
Yeah, this is where it gets mind-bending. She starts by admitting words basically fail when you try to describe transcendental knowledge, stuff you grasp beyond normal thinking.
The mystic's direct experience versus the philosopher trying to explain it.
Right, neither can fully convey it to someone who hasn't had that glimpse themselves. It's like trying to describe color to someone born blind.
So how does the Qabalah even attempt to bridge that gap?
Through symbols used in meditation. That's the Kabbalistic method, she explains. The symbols act like a ladder, a stairway of realization.
Ah, so you don't try to grasp the ultimate reality intellectual all at once?
No, you use the symbols to climb towards it, step by step. She uses that analogy of the eye not being able to hear music. The rational mind has limits when it comes to grasping the transcendent. Symbols offer a different doorway.
That helps clarify it. Where does the symbolic climb begin on the tree?
The starting point is Kether, the crown, the first Sephirah. It represents unity, the single point before anything else exists.
The beginning.
Yes. But importantly, Fortune says the Kabbalist works backwards from Kether towards the three veils of negative existence, Ein, Ein Sof, Ein Salfar.
Instead of starting with the absolute and moving forward.
Exactly. It's a practical approach. We start with the first point of manifestation we can conceive of, Kether, and trace back towards the incomprehensible source. It gives the mind a place to start.
That's a really interesting reversal. It feels more like an investigation than a top-down declaration.
It does. It might not give instant intellectual satisfaction or about ultimate origins, but it provides a workable model for spiritual practice. And here's a really key quote she uses from Mathers. Kether is the Malkuth of the unmanifest.
Whoa. Okay, unpack that. Kever, the highest, is the Malkuth, the lowest, of the unmanifest.
It sounds paradoxical, right? But it suggests that Kether, this first point of being, contains the potential of the entire manifested universe, Malkuth, within it, just in an unexpressed state, like the acorn holds the entire oak tree.
Mind blown. Okay. And the Sephiroth themselves, they aren't actual places, are they?
No, definitely not. She's very clear. They are states or conditions of existence, not physical locations stacked up.
So like different dimensions or levels of reality?
Kind of. They arose sequentially in a sort of timeless way, but they all exist simultaneously now. Her analogy is a person. You have a physical body, emotions, a mind, a spirit, all coexisting. The Sephiroth are like that, different levels of being existing at once.
That analogy helps a lot. Right, let's dive into the first three Sephiroth then, the supernal triangle, Kether, Chokmah, and Bina. Kether first.
Okay, Kether. As we said, the crown. Fortune describes it as pure being, pure potential. Everything is possible, but nothing is happening yet. It's the raw material of consciousness and existence.
The starting point.
Associated with the first whirlings, the prima mobile, the absolute initial impulse. Its God name is Ea, I am. pure being,
Archangel.
Metatron, the Prince of Countenances. And the spiritual goal linked to it is union with God, pure potential. That's the key takeaway.
Got it. Then comes Chokmah.
Chokmah is the first stirring out of Kether's stillness. It's pure activity, dynamism flowing forth. It's seen as a channel for energy, associated with the zodiac, the cosmic forces.
So force itself.
Yes, often called the masculine principle. The god name is Yah, Archangel Raziel. The spiritual experience is the vision of God as the all-in-all. And interestingly, its magical weapon is the phallus, or lingam.
Symbolizing.
The spiritual significance of polarity, the active generative power of pure force. It's about creation starting.
Okay. A powerful, maybe challenging symbol for some.
Yeah.
And the third supernal, Bina.
Bina is where Chokmah's raw force starts to take shape, find stability. Its structure emerging from interacting forces. Think of it like the banks containing a river, associated with the Great Sea, and also Saturn's structure, limitation.
So form. The feminine principle counterpart to Chokmah's force.
Exactly. God name Elohim, Archangel Tzafkiel. The spiritual experience is the vision of sorrow.
Sorrow. Why sorrow?
Not necessarily personal sadness, but the understanding that form implies limitation, impermanence. Everything that takes shape must eventually dissolve. Bina is called the supernal mother, the great womb of form, but also the bringer in of death, because form limits infinite force.
Unnecessary limitation for anything to actually exist.
Right. The esoteric text calls Bina the sanctifying intelligence. She's also linked symbolically to the Virgin Mary, bringing forth form without being consumed. Bina provides the essential structure.
Okay, so the supernal set the scene. Potential, Kether, force, Chokmah, and form, Bina. Then we get the second triangle, Hayasid, Geburah, Tifereth. What defines this group?
These three are really about the governing forces of manifested, evolving life. They are balanced on the tree's central pillar. He said is first, on the right, the pillar of mercy, associated with Jupiter.
Mercy, like kindness.
Yes, it's the outpouring from Bina, but in a benevolent, expansive way. Think of the wise, kind king, an organizer, builder, characterized by grace, abundance, order, God name, El Archangel, Sadkiel, spiritual experience, vision of love.
Nice. And its symbol.
The equal-armed cross, representing balance, the harmony of elements. He said is about benevolent organization and growth.
Okay. And balancing, he said, is Geburah.
Yes, Geburah is below Bina on the left, the pillar of severity,
Yeah.
associated with Mars. This is the warrior king aspect.
Severity. So harshness.
It can seem that way, but it's more about necessary corrective force. Strength, courage, justice, discipline, destruction of the obsolete or harmful. It provides the essential check on Hesed's expansion. Stops things from getting out of control.
So it's not inherently negative, but a necessary balancing force.
Exactly. Needed for strength and definition. God name is Elohim Gibor, God mighty. Archangels Kamael, spiritual experience, vision of power.
Power and love, balanced. And right in the middle.
Tifereth, the heart of the tree, on the central pillar of mildness or equilibrium, associated with the sun.
The balancing point.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the synthesis of Hesed's mercy and Geburah's severity. It represents harmony, beauty, the Redeemer figure, the Christ consciousness. It's the center of the individual self, the higher self or oversoul. Higher psychism lives here too.
A lot going on in Tifereth.
It's central, God name, Ilovadath, Archangel, Raphael the healer. Spiritual experience, vision of the harmony of things. Symbols include the Rose Cross, the Calvary Cross sacrifice, integration, redemption. Tifereth is the integration point.
Okay, that makes sense of its central position. Next triangle down, Netzach, Had, and Yesod, the magical or astral triangle.
Yes, these relate to the life force flowing down from Tifereth, expressing it on a more, well, personal or astral level. Netzach is first, on the right pillar of mercy again. Below, Yesod, associated with Venus.
Venus. So love and beauty again.
More like raw emotion, instinct, passion, artistry. It's the force aspect of Tifereth playing out in feelings. Natural urges, the splendor of raw life force. Refulgent splendor, God name. Adonai Sevoth, Archangel. Haniel, spiritual experience. Vision of beauty triumphant.
And its magical image.
A beautiful naked woman, symbolizing uninhibited nature, pure emotion, the artistic impulse. Netzach is the realm of feelings.
Okay, and opposite Netzach is Had.
Had, below Geburah, on the pillar of severity, associated with Mercury. If Netzach is feeling, Had is thinking.
Ah, the intellect.
The concrete mind, yes. Logic, science, communication, formulating ideas. It's the form aspect on this lower level. Also called the sphere of magic, meaning the formulation of forms, like in ritual or spell work. The Yetziratic text calls it perfect intelligence.
So the structured mind.
Exactly. God name, Elohim Sevath.
Archangel.
Michael, spiritual experience. Vision of splendor, the splendor of a perfectly working rational intellect.
Feeling netsack and thinking hot and bridging them in the middle.
Is Yesod, the foundation. On the middle pillar again, below Tifereth, associated with the moon.
A foundation
Of the manifest world, in a sense. Yesod represents the etheric substance, the astral light. Fortune calls it the treasure house of images. Think of it like the subconscious mind, the repository of all forms and images, the subtle energy patterns behind physical reality.
So the invisible blueprint.
Pretty much. It's the link between the higher energies and the physical.
Yeah.
God name, Shaddai El Chai, Almighty Living God. Archangel, Gabriel. Spiritual experience, vision of the machinery of the universe, seeing the underlying astral patterns.
And its image.
A beautiful naked man, very strong, symbolizing the potent vital life force that underlies everything. Yesod is that energetic foundation.
Okay, that makes sense. And that foundation then leads finally to Malkuth.
Malkuth, the kingdom. The very bottom, Saphira on the middle pillar. This is it, the final manifestation, physical reality, the sphere of the elements, earth.
The end of the line for the downward flow.
Right. It's called the inferior mother, Bina being the superior, the final concrete form. God names. Adonai Melech, or Adon Haaretz, Lord King, or Lord of the Earth, Archangel. Sandalphon.
And the spiritual experience here, is it just being physical?
It's the vision of the holy guardian angel, which means perceiving your own higher self, your true spiritual core, even within the physical world, seeing the divine in the material.
Ah, okay. Not just mundane reality then.
No, its virtue is discrimination, being able to see clearly within the material world, discern reality from illusion. And microcosmically, it relates to the feet are grounding and the anus elimination, finality. Malkuth is the culmination in the physical.
Very concrete imagery there. Now, what about death? It's not one of the 10, right? But it seems important.
Very important, but tricky. Death means knowledge. It's often shown on the tree in the abyss, the gap between the top 3 supernals and the rest.
So it bridges the highest and the lower.
Exactly. It's not a saphir itself, but a kind of secret gateway or state of consciousness. It represents the synthesis of everything on the tree, a point of unity containing all knowledge, law, justice, equilibrium. It allows awareness of eternity.
A state of knowingness.
Right. Fortune says it's where the logoidal meditation happens, where the pure supernal forces are translated into abstract knowledge that the lower consciousness can begin to grasp. It's like a hidden transformer station.
She mentions a symbol for it, the empty room.
Yes, signifying a state beyond symbols, beyond concepts, direct contact with reality itself. No forms, just pure awareness.
Profound. Okay, and lastly, just briefly, the paths connecting the Sephiroth.
The 22 paths. They represent the subjective journeys between the states represented by the Sephiroth, how consciousness moves and evolves.
So the Sephiroth and the states, the paths are the connections or experiences between them.
You could put it that way. Fortune contrasts the paths, which represent the soul's conscious journey up the tree, symbolized by the serpent Nekushtan winding upwards, with the lightning flash, which is the initial creative impulse flashing down the tree to create everything.
So one is manifestation, the other is the return journey.
Exactly. The paths are about individual evolution and initiation, moving between these fundamental states of being.
Wow. Okay. So putting it all together, the tree of life, as Dion Fortune lays it out, is this incredibly comprehensive, dynamic map.
Absolutely. It's a symbolic system covering everything from the unmanifest source down to physical reality and mapping out the levels of the universe and our own consciousness. The Sephiroth are interconnected aspects of divine energy and awareness.
A rich tapestry indeed, and clearly this deep dive has, well, only just scratched the surface.
Oh, definitely. It's a vast system. Which maybe leads to a thought for our listener to ponder. Given this idea of everything being interconnected on the tree, every Sephira influencing every other, how might seeing your own life, your experiences, the world, through that lens of interconnectedness, how might that shift your perspective?
That's a good question.
And maybe reflect on which part of this, which Sephira or concept we discussed, really resonated. What did you feel a connection to that might offer a clue about your own path right now?
That's definitely something to think about. And if this has sparked interest, we really do encourage folks to check out Fortune's The Mystical Qabalah itself or other resources. There's so much more there.
Absolutely. We hope this conversation has been a useful shortcut, though, a way to grasp some of these really profound ideas and maybe, just maybe, spark some ongoing curiosity.